Good evening. I would like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting to order for Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Would you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Councilmember Brocksmith.
Here.
Councilmember Correas.
Here.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Councilmember Molinar.
Here.
Councilmember Cicero.
Here.
Councilmember Vandersloot.
Here.
Thanks, Becky. Council, any proposed changes to the agenda or a motion to adopt it?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mary and a second by Gary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Item 3 is community comments. If anyone's here tonight to address City Council, please come on up and state your name and city of residence and limit your comments to about 3 minutes if you would. Anyone here for community comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on to tonight's consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes meeting minutes, payroll checks, wire transfers, claims, and an agreement. Council like to move for adoption.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item A off the consent agenda.
Right.
And otherwise, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented minus item A.
Second.
Motion and a second to pull item A from the consent agenda and then approve the consent agenda without item A. Any discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Councilmember Brocksmith, do you want to discuss that now?
I do. So the item we pulled off is special city council meeting minutes from June 6th. Had to pull them off or you can't discuss anything on consent agenda. So that's why it got pulled off. And I just wanted to, I think the notes are great. They're very detailed, lots of information here. There was one sentence which I would ask and make a motion to strike, and I just got to find that sentence.
Okay.
It was around the topic number 3, discussion on funding alignment of opioid settlement funds. And there was a lot of good discussion that we had, including the first sentence of the second paragraph says the group discussed the projects. And there were several projects that we discussed and noted the benefits of joint funding, but found it difficult to decide which projects to fund with the available opioid settlement funds, which of course makes sense. We were only in the room for an hour. There were, 4 cities there. We didn't get into any detail. The next sentence says, after further discussion, a preference was shown for the detox bridge housing, additional recovery housing, and some STAR center startup costs. And I did not hear, nor do I believe we had time to actually talk about preferences. There were a lot of good ideas thrown out. More information that we need to follow up on. I think a strong desire by everyone to continue to have that discussion. But I think saying that we have a preference, that certainly doesn't represent what I was feeling that day. But I could easily be outvoted, so that's fine too. So that's the sentence that I would like to see struck.
Assuming that's in the form of a motion, I would second that.
Okay, so a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item A with, trying to find the second sentence of second paragraph of item 3 struck.
Well done.
Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to say, though, it also states it was agreed that additional discussion was needed on this topic. So that satisfies my concern, but obviously it doesn't satisfy your concern.
More discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Okay, the motion passes. Consent item A passes with those noted changes. Any questions on that? We got it? Okay, great. Thanks, Becky. All right. Item 5 is committee reports. Council held its Public Works and Library Committee meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, and Councilmember Mary Hudson chairs that committee and has a report for us. process.
Thank you, Mayor. Like the mayor stated, we met tonight just before this meeting. First item is always approval of our minutes from our last meeting, which we did. We did a little shuffle on our agenda. We have an item on our agenda tonight that involves a levy lid lift that we're going to discuss or have discussed now, but are going to be voting on. And we put that at the beginning of our agenda because we really wanted to talk about it in a council, if you will, committee setting. So we talked about that for about half an hour or so. I can't summarize it very well in a short period of time, but basically we talked about the value of a 6-year levy lift versus a permanent levy lift. So we will be talking about that again tonight. It's item C on our agenda. Next, we moved into a presentation from Frank from our Public Works Department, and the subject was the Division Street State Route 536 Bridge Planning Study Proposal. We know that we've talked about the bridge for a long time, and Frank put together this great presentation. It provided a city public works department evaluation of WashDOT's findings and feasibility conclusions, including the limitations of their evaluation to modify the existing bridge for safer multimodal use. The presentation briefly described the division between the state transportation capital and maintenance budgets, which they're two different buckets of money. And also briefly described the division of the responsibility between the city and the state. When the state's highway, it's also a city street. So where is that division and responsibility held? And specifically pertaining to bridges, because if I remember correctly, Frank stated that bridges are pretty much theirs. They've decided that that's their purview. Let's see. He also outlined a method for the city to sponsor a bridge capital improvement project more directly for the state and our federal appropriation in the legislature. The presentation described a conceptual city-led and funded bridge planning study, including reasons for the city to both lead and fund the study, key planning study scope elements, key planning study deliverables and outcomes, and funding strategy using local funds, and a proposed schedule to start the study. We as a council asked some questions. Basically, we know that the community wants something done with the bridge. We've heard about that for years, something that I heard before I got on the council. I think we've all heard from our constituents that the bridge is ugly and needs to be replaced because it's not big enough. It doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have the use that we need to have now as our city is growing and has grown since that bridge was built. So we discussed, and I'm not sure that we came to a final decision, but we do definitely feel like it's a best use. We can't wait for the state anymore, basically. We're ready to put some of our money into the study. Then we own the study too, and that gives us a little bit more power, if you will. We ended our committee meeting went straight up to 7, which is obviously when this council meeting starts. So we are going to come back into our committee meeting after our council meeting is done. So there will be more discussion, and so I'll say that then we ended our meeting at 7.
We hit pause at 7.
We hit pause.
And we'll come back and talk about some public works items and some library items as well. Thank you, Mary. There was no public safety committee last week. We'll move to item 5B. It's council member comments. Any council member comments this evening? Yes, council member B.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say how pleased I was at I think our fireworks ban worked. I did not, certainly, I thought there were significantly less fireworks in our community. And I thought Police and Fire did a fantastic job. I believe it was Public Works that put out all the signs on the streets. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member comments? Okay, item 5C, there's no mayor's report tonight. We'll move on to new business. Item A is a public hearing for an infrastructure waiver, and senior planner Stacy Clausen is going to introduce this item. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. As noted, I am Stacy Clausen, Senior Planner, and I'm pleased to present this evening the hearing examiner's recommendation on for permit ENGR 25-0132, which is a proposed infrastructure waiver for street improvement frontage requirements associated with a two-lot short plat located at 1801 Woodland Drive. And so we have in front of you this evening a request for action to consider adoption of approval of a resolution. And that resolution seeks to waive Woodland Drive street improvements that would otherwise be required for a two-lot short plat. The hearing examiner has issued a recommendation to you to request, recommending that you do approve the proposed waiver request. So just briefly wanted to review with you as background. The site is located at 1801 Woodland Drive. It's approximately a 29,000 square foot lot. It has an existing residence and approximately 150 feet of linear street frontage along Woodland Drive. In May of this year, the applicant received preliminary short plat approval to divide the property into two separate lots. The approval is contingent on either completing the required street frontage improvements prior to final plat approval or obtaining a waiver of these street improvements. The applicant is therefore seeking this waiver request, which, if approved, would allow for the final short plat process to be completed, resulting in one additional infill lot to be created within the city. So just a quick overview of the current street configuration and the proposed and what would normally be required along this type of street frontage. So the image above shows the current street frontage along Woodland Drive. And this is a neighborhood road section, and there are current deficiencies, and those include the slight deficiency in the pavement width, a lack of curb and gutter, a lack of landscape strip, and a lack of sidewalk that's currently existing that would normally be required for a neighborhood type street. So under the city's short plat regulations, if the street fronting the property that is to be divided is deficient, for the street classification, installation of improvements are required prior to final approval of the short plat. So as noted, there are deficiencies in this circumstance. The code also provides a provision to allow for waiver of these. The approval authority for waiver is the city council. It requires a process, what we call a process 4 decision type, which requires public notice, a public hearing, a hearing examiner recommendation, and final action by the city council, which is how this project got to you here this evening. So the application has followed the required procedural requirements, and the hearing examiner, as noted previously, has issued a recommendation. And this recommendation did review, addressed in his findings of consistency with the required approval for a waiver. And the hearing examiner felt that the proposal met the required waiver conditions. Specifically, I want to note that the Development Services and the Public Works Department have supported the request. In addition, the city engineer had indicated no objection to the request. And these recommendations are based on the site and surrounding conditions. In particular, the distance that this property is from other street frontage improvement requirements is about a half mile separated from streets that have similar frontage improvements as would be required under the standards. And also, this project is viewed to be premature. Since we don't have any capital improvements in this area designed to construct improvements, constructing an isolated section of about 150 feet of frontage improvements just doesn't make sense. And it will likely result in us having to remove those improvements at such time in the future as the street is improved to required to meet those street standards. So that's really one of the key considerations here. And the parties have agreed that have recommended approval that there are no significant adverse impacts associated with this proposal. So with that, therefore, as outlined, the proposal has been recommended to be consistent with the procedural and substantive review requirements for a waiver request. And the resolution accompanying your packet tonight outlines the associated recommended findings to support the waiver request, if it is the council desire to support this request.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you.
Council, any questions for Stacy on this, either procedurally or about the resolution itself?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, you go, Gary.
Go ahead, Gary.
I love common sense. I think you outlined that very clearly. I'm in, but I'm not voting.
You don't want a floating sidewalk?
No, and I've driven by those, just those little sections. I get it in big commercial areas where things are gonna happen, but this makes sense. Thank you.
Mayor?
Well, maybe I'll just shoot that all to hell, but.
No. What about down the road 30
What about
years?
down the road 30 years? Are we gonna have to put in sidewalks?
Mhm.
But that is my question.
I know.
So going forward, is that going to be something that the city would be required to do if indeed this gets developed further? Whose onus is that gonna be on?
Yeah, I mean, if it would essentially be waived for this short plat requirement. So there are other mechanisms. There's local improvement districts where we can coordinate and work with property owners to install infrastructure improvements. It could become a city-initiated capital improvement program. So there are a number of mechanisms available for the city to investigate when it's looking to complete capital improvements.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one, and maybe this isn't a fair question. Is there any way that we could turn this into an administrative task that without any other, no hearing examiner, nothing, somebody makes a decision, you check it, and then we don't have to do any of this?
So that would require a revision right now to the municipal code. And since these fall within our subdivision regulations, those would need to follow the process that we have outlined for other type of development code changes, which does require those to come forward through SEPA environmental review process and hearings before the Planning Commission and City Council. But those are revisions that we could consider, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've talked about that at the staff level too, just that convenience, and we'll talk again at the council level of, is this one of the items you would like to see administratively approved? And bypass this whole weird function of city council.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, with that, I will open the closed record public hearing. If there are any parties of record in attendance who would like to speak, come on up. I'm not seeing any, and so I will close the closed record public hearing and turn to council and look for a motion for resolution 1076, if you'd like.
I would make a motion that we authorize the mayor to sign an accompanying resolution 1076 that would waive required street frontage improvements.
Second.
Motion by Andrew and a second by Melissa. More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
Item B is an agreement for an art donation, and our Parks and Enrichment Director, Jennifer Berner, will present this item. Hi, Jennifer.
Good evening, council. Good evening, Mayor. So before you this evening is an art donation, and Matt Iverson, the nephew of artist Mark Iverson, contacted the city about donating one of Mark's art pieces to the city. It's the Betty Black sunflowers. You have a copy of that in your packet of that of that painting. It's a 51 by 51 acrylic painting. Mark Iverson was instrumental in procuring and supporting public art here for the city of Mount Vernon. He served on the Arts Commission for several years as well. And the friends and family of Mark Iverson are honored to have this be seen in a city office somewhere or a city building. And so staff is requesting council to accept Mark Iverson's sunflower paintings donation and authorize the mayor to sign the donation agreement.
Questions for
Any
Jennifer?
questions?
It's a beautiful painting. I'm excited we get to have it.
Yes,
I'll move for the donation agreement to be signed.
Second.
thank
Motion
you.
by Mary and a second by Navor. More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Thank you, Jennifer. But don't go far. Item C is a resolution for a general election proposition, and Jennifer Berner has this item as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And so this is a team effort. I am spokesperson, but there's a team behind me regarding our police chief, our fire chief, our finance director, and our city attorney. So with that, the city, I know you've had a lot of discussion already, and I'm sorry I missed out on that. I was back at my desk working on some other things for this levy, so I'm sorry I missed that. But please, I'll do a short presentation here for the public, and then we can open it up for questions and try to answer any other questions that folks might have. So the city is facing, as you know, a budget gap, which is projected revenues being less than the projected the expenses. The city faces a perfect storm of financial pressures, personnel costs that dominate the budget, and steady inflation outpaces the revenue growth. The discretionary portion of the budget continues to shrink, which we have talked about here around budget, limiting financial flexibility. For several years, the city has used general fund reserves to balance the budget. However, these reserves are dwindling, which we've also talked about in regards to budget at these council meetings. Without intervention, the gap will continue to expand, forcing difficult decisions between service reductions or identifying new sustainable revenue sources. The option of putting a levy lid lift out to the voters has been discussed with council at several different meetings. We started back in 2024 at our council retreat, and we've had a variety of conversations at council regarding that since then. The primary goals of the levy lid lift are to relieve pressure from the general fund, enhance critical city services, and create sustainable funding for parks and public safety being our police and fire departments. The proposed levy creates dedicated funding that ensures Mount Vernon can maintain and improve the services that our residents value most. The levy lid lift would provide funding for parks in the way of maintenance and operations, maintain and increase staffing levels, capital projects, and community events and youth recreation programs. And when we talk about youth recreation programs, think about your supervised playground program that we talked about and brought to you guys at the end of last summer, and that program and how impactful that is to our community. That's a free program for our most needed families in our community that have the greatest need. And it's a free supervised playground program. And if we can fund that through the levy for staffing and things of such, then it's a program that we can continue to offer. Fire, it's an increase in staffing and fund equipment and apparatus. And police, it would increase staffing, equipment, and vehicles for that additional staff. So that's the basics of what this levy would fund. If adopted, the proposed resolution number 1077 would submit a ballot measure to the Mount Vernon voters that, if approved, would reset the city's 2026 general property tax levy rate. Without additional revenues, the city will be required to substantially reduce basic services to the city's residents, including services related to public safety, police and fire again, parks, and other community services or recreation programming. Staff recommends City Council adopt Resolution 1077, placing either a temporary or a permanent property tax levy lid lift on the November 4th, 2025 general election ballot. Included in your packet today was the both resolutions for a temporary or a permanent, and all the PowerPoints that had been presented to you most recently regarding talks about a levy lid lift, just to try and give you enough information for you to go back and review those if needed. I know it's a lot to take in, and there's been a lot to digest. And so we're here to answer any questions that you might have regarding the levy lid lift.
Right. Thanks for the presentation, Jennifer. Any questions for Jennifer or general discussion from council? Yeah, Councilmember Tercero.
I would just like to once again reiterate that I would personally like to see this as a three-way split between parks, police, and fire. I'll just throw that out.
Other comments, discussion?
Go ahead, Drew. I know you have some.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think we certainly know, and I hope the general public knows, just the financial pressures the city is facing with significant increases in expenses. You know, inflation has not done any of us any good recently, and we have a structural cap on our property tax of 1% a year. And so our discretionary funding for the last several years has been going down and down and down. And what we're looking at in the city is quite a reduced level of service if we stay on the same course that we're on. And so we know that we have to sharpen our pencils and reduce expenses wherever possible. You know, we've been doing that, and significant efficiencies in our departments. There's only so much blood you can get out of a turnip, I guess, to use an old phrase. And so we asked for creative solutions about what we can do. And I think folks also know that we have also been trying to increase our public safety staffing for many years now. And it's just been very difficult because it's a long-term obligation to hire someone and keep them on board and not turn around and have to pull the rug out from underneath them. There just wasn't the funds available. And people also know that our parks are unfortunately, fully subject to the general fund and usually get the shortest shift at the end of the budget each year. So the creative idea that we've come up and we're putting forward to, I think we'll be putting forward to the city, is a levy lift that would essentially backfill those, or let me say, add additional revenue to keep us from having to reduce the level of service that the city currently enjoys in the next few years. There's really no other way around it. And so I believe the council is likely to move forward on putting this on the ballot for the end of the year, to put the question to members of, citizens of the city as to what level of service they want to see in our city. And so we think it's our obligation to put the best package forward. It's obviously our obligation to make sure money we already have is well spent. We're doing that every day. But we want to put this idea forward to you, the citizens of Mount Vernon, about what level of service you want to see the city have. And we promise in return that we will spend it well to add additional activities and infrastructure in our parks. It would add an additional police person, additional, what's the right word? Officer,
staff member.
yeah, somebody out on the prowl, right? On the parole. What's the word I'm looking for?
Patrol.
Losing roles. I was doing really well until it was. And I'll end with one last thing. It's the fire department as well. We had a great presentation from our fire service that showed that with this additional staffing of 9 additional firemen or women, that we would expand the coverage of service. And so there's a level of service that we expect around, as sort of a guidance, around 4 minutes to get to a residence once the call is made. This staffing level that we're talking about would increase the coverage in our city by 33%. So you're 33% more likely in that area, you're going to get service in 4 minutes from our fire station. So we think that is a huge benefit to our public, and the alternative to this would be decreased levels of service. So this is the package we're putting forward, and I'll stop while I'm ahead before I forget any more words. So thank you for the time.
Thanks. Other council member comments? Yeah, Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you. This is not anything that we take lightly, because we're going to pay this as well. This is going to be on our tax bill as well. But we realize what the level of service, like Richard talked about, that our citizens expect. And when Jennifer talked about, or Richard talked about, where we would, if this didn't happen to pass, where we would cut, would be parks, would be possibly police and fire, it's going to be other pieces of the city as well. It's not just those 3 areas that would be impacted. So we will be ready to answer your questions. If you have a question for any of us about what is this for, what are we doing with the money, blah, 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 and I don't mean that negatively, you have questions, please ask the questions because we want to answer, we want to give you the facts so that you can make the best decision for yourself and your family and for your fellow residents as well. And I thank everybody for their hard work on this. I know it's been a what's the word I want? It's been a sprint, and I appreciate all the hard work.
Thanks, Mary.
Mhm.
Other thoughts? Comments? Yeah, Councilmember Beatty.
Yeah, I just will piggyback onto what these two have said. It is not a decision that we take lightly, and there has been a lot of conversation around this. I want to point out just for the police department alone, they have not added a fully commissioned police position in that department in over 30 years. And you can think of the growth that we have had and the growth that we're going to have moving forward. We have got some wonderful parks, and Richard is right, and Jennifer knows this, that, it seems that is where the deduction comes from, and it shouldn't be like that. We deserve to have good parks. We deserve to have that quick response time, and so for those reasons, that is why, some of the reasons why we are supporting this.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I would move if nobody else has any other comment.
I was thinking.
Okay, let me get through the whole thing. I would move to approve the permanent version of or the resolution number 1077, placing property tax levy lid lift on November 4th, 2025, general election ballot to set the city's property tax levy rate to the maximum aggregate rate of $2, 25, I don't even know how to say that, 0.2537 per assessed valuation in 2026. Sorry, do I need to repeat?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Councilmember Cuddyas, do you still like it?
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Andrew, second by Udis. More discussion, yeah, the board.
So what's been proposed is the permanent, not the 6-year.
That's correct. Other questions, discussion? Okay. All in favor of passing resolution 1077, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
Motion passes.
Can I just make one statement too?
Yes.
In regards to Mary's comment about questions? One of the things that we are going to be working very diligently on is getting FAQs together, loading that up on website, pushing that out to the public, also factual information. So that's right on our list. Some of the things I was just working on before this meeting here is just pulling all of that stuff together to push all that information out to the public, to help you guys as well as council members, help our staff answer those types of questions. And then one other thing I forgot to mention is when we did our pros plan, one of the things that the public did say, 55% of the public did say when we asked them if they would pay more for specifically for parks improvements for a levy or some sort of tax support, they did say yes, that they would vote for that. Now, obviously, that's different when they go to vote, but just as a measure of maybe of some help support, that there is some folks out there that really do feel that this is important.
Yeah. Jennifer, Doug, thanks for really spearheading this. Honestly, it has been a sprint as we've identified some of these tools. We've heard from the legislative branch tonight, and so you get to hear from the executive branch on this topic too. And I didn't have a mayor's report, so I reserved some time. But just wanted to address this. We all sort of cringe just a little bit about conversations around taxes. But the reality is that the services like having the police show up at your home or business when your safety is compromised, or having the fire department take you to the hospital or help you protect your property from fire damage. Having open space to go to that's safe, that's well maintained, and provides recreational opportunities for your family. These are services that we receive as residents, and they're funded through taxes. And the level of service that the city of Mount Vernon is able to provide for our residents, you've heard it tonight, and for our businesses, is reliant on this funding. That's how local government was designed to operate. Our residents pay us for services that we provide to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your elected officials and city staff in Mount Vernon take that really seriously. Now, in addition to that, the city of Mount Vernon is also required to pass a balanced budget every year. We don't get to print money. We don't get to vote to raise the debt ceiling over and over again. Like every one of our residents with a personal household budget, we have to match our expenses to our income. The city's been very transparent about the fact that for years and for a number of reasons, namely the inflationary cost of doing business, Mount Vernon's expenses are outpacing our revenues. In other words, for several years, we residents have been receiving services beyond what we're paying for. And it's to the point where the city has had to drastically cut back on staffing to the bare minimum essential positions. And we're operating now at a staffing level where it is just not possible to keep up and to provide adequate services for a population that's grown by over 50% in the last 25 years. The size of our city and the demand for city services that are demanded by 36,000 residents now are growing at a rate that's vastly outpacing our income. People are usually shocked when I tell them that the portion of funding that goes from their property tax to the city of Mount Vernon to fund our services, all of our services, is about 15% of my property tax payment goes to the city of Mount Vernon. That's what's left after the state, the school district, the county, the other taxing jurisdictions get their share. We're doing a lot with a little. And so the solution for a city that's committed to passing a balanced budget is pretty simple. We can either increase our revenue or we can cut services, because we can only provide that level of service that our residents are willing to pay for. And so this levy is nothing more than a question for our residents. What level of service are we taxpayers willing to contribute toward in order to make our city safer, to fight crime, to save lives, to enhance the quality of our lives here? And I believe that good leaders are people who are willing to boldly ask that difficult question. And I trust that our voting process is going to allow us to get to a response that's going to demonstrate what we truly value in Mount Vernon. And so I just want to thank city council members for being willing to ask that question of our residents, to ask our residents in November what they believe Mount Vernon deserves. Are we willing to pay a little bit more to ensure that the service that we rely on every single day and night continue to operate reliably and expand proportionately with our demand? So that's all I had. Thanks for indulging me. We'll move to item D. Sorry to make you stand there that whole time, Jennifer. That was terrible.
I didn't want to walk away while you were speaking.
You're so nice. Item D is in agreement with the Washington Conservation Corps, and Public Works Director Chris Phillips has this item. Or maybe it's Blaine Chesterfield. Hi, Blaine.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, thank you tonight. Yes, it is going to be me instead of the distinguished Mr. Phillips, Director Phillips. It's going to be me tonight. So the Washington Conservation Corps, about February, you guys passed a contract for them to do 2 weeks worth of work in our detention ponds. And due to some changes in the way that they get funding, they don't get AmeriCorps funding anymore. So that reduces their funding by about 11%. Since they don't get that funding anymore, it cost us a little bit more per a week's worth of crew time like each day. So it went up from 1,385 per day to 1,540 per day. And they're offering us, because they're not doing the AmeriCorps work anymore, they're offering us 4 more weeks. So the first 2 weeks we got at the previous price per day, but these next 4 weeks has gone up a little bit. It's still a great value for us. We get 5 crew members, a truck, and a bunch of equipment that comes with them when they do the work, and they're really hard workers. So I think it's still a very good value for us to get 4 more weeks of their time to catch up on a lot of our detention pond work that, quite honestly, the report I gave at committee a couple weeks ago or a month ago, you know, we were a little bit behind our detention ponds, so this would be a good investment. So based on that, staff is recommending the council approve amendment number 1 of the drainage facility maintenance agreement with the Washington State Department of Ecology to have the Washington Conservation Corps perform vegetation maintenance. The amendment to the agreement will increase the crew time from 2 weeks up to 6 weeks, 4 additional weeks of Washington Conservation Corps crew time with costs not to exceed $35,720.
Questions for Blaine?
I'd move to approve Amendment 1 with the Washington State Department of Ecology.
Second.
Is it ecology?
Yes, it's the Department of Ecology. It's it's one of their programs, the Washington Conservation Corps.
Yep, got
program.
it.
I just didn't want to go through your whole.
Motion by Gary, and was it Mary? Second by Mary. Any more discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes. Thanks, Blaine. Item E is the approval of an agreement with Interwest Construction, and looks like Frank Reiner has this one.
Do.
Hi, Frank.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I come before you this evening to recommend that council award and authorize the mayor to execute a public works contract with Interwest Construction Incorporated for the construction of the LaVenture Road Widening Project. The LaVenture Road Widening Project, which is the last time I will ever name a new sidewalk bike lane project a road widening project, anticipates constructing new sidewalk on the east side of LaVenture Road and bike lanes on both sides between the intersections of Hogue Road and Sigmar Lane. This fills a gap that we have in our service, especially on the east side of the street. This will continue our efforts in that regard on LaVenture Road. The project will replace pedestrian crosswalk ramps at the intersections of that street with Sandalwood Drive and Austin Lane. That is particularly important for the sake of the bus stops that are located on both sides of the street there. And will mark a new crosswalk across LaVenture Road to increase the safety of people crossing LaVenture Road in the vicinity of this project. Finally, we will do a thin grind and overlay of LaVenture Road within the footprint that I've just described there for the purposes of pavement rehabilitation along that section. And actually, finally, on top of that, right now on the east side of the street, we have a surface stormwater drainage channel. We need to convert that to an underground pipe system on that side of the street to accommodate the new sidewalk. So this project is currently funded through an urban arterial program grant that we have from the State Department or the State Transportation Improvement Board for both design and construction, with local funds supplying both the grant matching and the ineligible costs associated with the project. So we advertised for bids for this project on June 4th. We advertised for 3 weeks, open bids on June 25th. We got 5 bidders bidding, a fairly competitive litany of builds this time around. Obviously, people are interested in doing work in the city of Mount Vernon. After review, staff determined that the bid received from Interwest Construction Incorporated satisfied the project contract documents in terms of both lowest responsive bid from a responsible bidder. Consequently, we are recommending a motion to award and sign a contract with them to move forward with the construction of this project. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for Frank? Yes. Richard?
It looks like our TIP had this estimated construction around $1.25 million. This is significantly less than our estimate. That's great news.
Yes.
Any?
So two things happened. One, our estimate was high going into the project. So as you can see, by the time we finished with design, by the time we finished with everything that we needed, even Transpo's estimate was approximately $300,000 lower than what we had estimated for construction for this project, and the bids came in accordingly to validate that.
And, oh, well, that's great. Thank you. I'll just leave it at that.
I'll make,
Questions?
I don't have any questions. I'll just go ahead and make a motion to award and that council award and authorize the mayor to execute the contract with Interwest Construction.
Second.
Motion by Melissa and a second by Richard. More discussion?
I just have a quick question.
Yep.
What do you want to call it instead of road widening? Maybe deep.
I am obligated by contract to call this the LaVenture Road Widening Project because we've already signed grant agreements that have that name on there. So I will have to continue calling this one. I just never will use that phraseology again because I lost track of the number of questions I got from the public asking me why I was adding a lane to LaVenture Road.
Oh, that's
Fair
no
enough.
fun, Frank. What did you want to name it?
I was thinking de-pedestrianizing.
Mm. No?
No,
Okay.
no laughs. Oh, I'm sorry.
Tough.
I know.
Yeah. Tough. All in favor, say aye.
I.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Thank you for enduring all of that, Frank. No worries. That is the end of our new business. For item 7, I will ask the city attorney to please call the mayor and city council to executive session.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council will now meet in an executive session for a period of 10 minutes to discuss with legal counsel matters relating to enforcement actions, litigation, or potential litigation to which the city of the governing body or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party. When public knowledge regarding such discussions is likely to result in either adverse legal or financial consequence to the city pursuant to RCW 4230-110 subsection 1I, we will reconvene for no further action at 8 o'clock.
All right, and so Kevin said about 10 minutes for that committee meeting. If you are planning on staying for the committee meeting to reconvene, you can wait in the lobby there if you would, and we'll come out and get you in about 10 minutes or less. And with that, we will adjourn the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for Wednesday, July 9th, 2025 at 7:50 p.m.